Welcome to
RooDoesNails on YouTube.
And today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10
Warhammer
betrayals.
Hello and welcome back to the Nail Cave. So today we're back with another RooDoesNails Warhammer crossover event, and this set is dedicated to Saul Tarvitz. So to put it into a bit of context, I am reading the Horus Heresy, but other than that, the knowledge that I have of 40k is only the stuff that I've seen in Games Workshop on the boxes. So I do have a good idea of the Primarchs that turn to chaos, but other than that, I am completely in the dark. So when I finished Galaxy in Flames, I was traumatized, and there wasn't one character that I'd fallen in love with that survived this turn 3. All of them dead. Like literally there is no one that I liked that wasn't a loyalist. Anyway, so I had this idea in my head for a while and it took me a while to actually execute it because I didn't really know how to do it justice, but here we are and it's finished. So leave your love for Saul Tarvitz in the comments and feel free to write a hate message to Lucian, and with that we'll get into the painting. Hello, it's VoiceOver Ruby here. So we're going to start off the way we always do, with some sort of resemblance to a plan. I didn't have a fully formed idea for both hands in my head yet, so I'm just going to start off with the Saul Tarvitz hand first. Doing my usual prep on long coffins and then getting straight into the painting. So to capture the true Emperor's Children vibe, I actually polled my Warhammer friends to ask them which purple they thought was most appropriate, and this one won out. It definitely looks more desaturated on camera, but in real life it's much more vibrant. I deepened the edges with a bit of an ombre and then added some scuffs to the armor plates as well. I'm going to be using the isolated chrome method on these nails, which I did show in a previous video, but here's a little recap. To get a really clean look, you're going to need a matte top coat. I used this one by Valor, it's called Draw Matte, and it is fantastic for this purpose, but to be honest, any matte top coat works pretty good. Once you've got your matte top coat down, you need to use a product that is non-white. My go-to for these kinds of fine details is always the Brill Bird Brush and Go in black. It is super self-leveling, which is good and bad for different reasons. Obviously with it self-leveling you get a really smooth finish, but it does mean on really tiny details it sometimes flows together and then you lose all of the definition. So to do things like the tiny Roman numeral 3, I had to cure each line individually just for about 15 seconds to make sure they didn't flow together. It's time consuming, but for the payoff of the product I do think it's worth it. The chrome goes on so buttery smooth and it layers really well, so you can get this cool like raised embossed effect. So you can see here that we're on nail number 2 now. I'm using the same technique of isolating the chrome, and I know this emblem looks a little weird and not that Emperor's Children-y, but trust me, this is what it looks like on the Saul Tarvitz model from Forge World. This one I also shaded with some brown to deepen the gold and make it a bit richer, and then when I compared it to the first nail that I did, I realized how different they looked, so I scrapped it and I had another go. This time I did the metallic trim at the top and the bottom of the nail, and I deepened it with gold in the same way, and the emblem is just a little bit daintier than before, and I think it looks much better next to the second nail that I did. Moving on to the final armor nail, and just strap in for this. Right, first up, same technique, Emperor's a killer. We've got to have it on there somewhere because what says Emperor's Children like Daddy loves us more than he loves you? Should I have practiced painting this before just doing it straight on the nail? Yes, but you know me, I don't practice shit. My artistic process is do it, spend hours on it, and if you hate it, do it again. Works every time. So the first layer of chrome detail is done and shaded, and then the second matte top coat goes on. If it wasn't obvious, this is the chest plate, and I wanted it to be as busy as possible because it's something quite different about the 40k and 30k aesthetics that I really like. A lot of future sci-fi stuff is like really sleek and clean, but not the Astartes, baby. They have things everywhere. A million little pockets and belts for knickknacks, of which I approve, and then capes and cloaks and oaths of moments, of which I do not approve. A cloak is not appropriate for warfare and I will die on this hill. So I went for belts, tubes, and I think the Vox box, but I'm not sure because my Warhammer expert is at download. Next up is the loin armor. I don't know what anything is called. The leather straps covering the dick, okay? Whatever. To do these, I used some high opacity gel paints and just blended them while they were wet to get the right shading. And once I'd done the color, I used the same isolated chrome technique to add the rivets onto the nail and then also add some borders. I did the top border in the gold chrome so that it was consistent across all 4 nails. And I did the rivets and the caps on the end of each strap in silver because I love a mixed metal moment. And this nail was so blissfully quick. I think it only took about 20 minutes, and that was great because this was the final nail that I actually knew what I wanted to do, and then the rest was just, well, anyone's guess really. So let's see what my brain cooked up. What I did know is that I wanted the design to flow from one thumb to the second, so I'm working on both thumbs at the same time. I mixed up a really deep indigo base and then added clouds to the surface and added a matte top coat. And now for actually designing the right hand. What I wanted to do was is a panorama of the different stages of the virus bombs. And I didn't really know how I was going to do this other than some loose ideas from previous sets and trying to find some fan art which doesn't really exist. I listened to a dramatic reading of those final chapters on Istan 3, you know, to get me in the mood. So once I was appropriately traumatized again, I thought, what is the worst that could happen? And I just got started. So this hand is obviously going to be quite fiery, so I knew the color palette I was going to go for. I guess you could kind of call these sunset colors. I went for deep reds and oranges that I knew would complement the purple of the left hand. And I also knew that I wanted the design to flow from one nail to the other, so I'm working across 2 nails at a time. The final stage of the virus bombs is obviously everything being obliterated. It's after the fire, everything is scorched. So I went for a cracked scorched earth design, which I added a little bit of smoke to so that it blended into the sky. To transition between the ring finger and the little finger, I'm adding a little bit of smouldering because the ring finger is going to be mostly an explosion, so it flows from one nail to the other. So I top coated the little finger and then went back to finish off the ring finger. I'm painting this fireball explosion exactly how I did it on the Bakugo set, which I'll link here if you haven't seen. We're somewhat counterintuitively working up towards black. So the center of the fireball is the brightest, so that's white. And then I'm blending up through yellow, orange, brown, and then finally black. So yes, it seems like I just covered up most of the stuff that I did, but it looks so good next to the other one. It has that real transition from one nail to the other that I was going for. Then I pivoted over to the thumb. I switched out the design and did the bombs coming down on this nail, and most of the footage isn't there because my SD card was full and I didn't realize. But see this transition between the purple and the orange? That's what we want. Okay, so this is the index finger now. We're starting off with the same indigo at the top and then ombreing down to white. So the very tip is the same as the thumbnail. And to make the design flow from the thumb to the index finger, I'm also drawing virus bombs on this one. So I outlined the shape in white first, and then I did a wet blend from red down to white at the front to give it that flaming effect. In the foreground, I'm going to do the planet surface. And this is pre-scorching from the virus bombs, but it's not what Istan 3 would originally look like because this is post-battle from the Astartes. So I'm adding some brown to make it look a bit more muddy and battle-trodden. Shout out to this website that databases all of the different descriptions of the different planets in the Horus Heresy. A true little legend. So the descriptions of the buildings on Istan 3 are mostly of industrial spires and archers. Some fan art interprets this in a real kind of gothic way, whereas some others embrace a more like Victorian workhouse vibe. I leaned more gothic fantasy because I thought it would look better in silhouette. Finally tackling the viscera nail, and I copped out and thought I'd do half of it of an explosion and then put the viscera on these 2 corners of these 2 nails. I started off with a brown color of old oxidized blood and then brightened that up with red. And then I added some bright blue to get that purple color of like freshly exposed muscle. Mum, I'm so sorry. I know you watch these videos and you're really squeamish. I'm sorry, approximately 50% of my sets have blood on them. Explosion in the top corner, just like on the ring finger, and then we get this real transition between the index and the ring finger. Looking at them again, I thought there was a bit too much empty space here, so I added in some more architecture. And then I thought that the viscera didn't really scream soup made up of the flesh of 1,000 warriors that you just betrayed, so I added in some intestine style blending just to add a little bit more detail without actually having to draw melted space marines on there. And then at this stage I thought I had done everything that I possibly could, so I added a really thick layer of glossy top coat in order to smooth out all of those layers. And finally this hand was all finished and I could move on to my final nail. I was really nervous to do this one because I don't usually draw things from scratch myself. I usually have a reference photo that I copy, and even though there's some incredible Saul Tarvitz fan art out there, I couldn't find one inside profile because I wanted it to be like he was looking across at the destruction that was happening. So I had to make this one up for myself, and I also wanted it to be somewhat realistic as well, and we all know that that's just not what I do here. So I challenged myself to do this entire face wet blended and only cured before putting on the armor plates. I think it turned out okay, but it was so nerve-wracking to just keep painting knowing that I couldn't wipe off a layer if I screwed up. Finally, before adding the chrome details, I added in the details to the face, and once he looked like Professor X, I stole this idea from my partner's Warhammer painting, and that's to mask off using liquid latex. I could have added a matte top coat like I usually do, but that would have put a small layer between the face and what will be the hair, and it adds this weird 3D element that I didn't want to have. I wanted it to look like one flat painting. And bonus, the peel was so satisfying. Lastly, adding the hair. And like I said, I'm trying to challenge myself, so I actually looked up a tutorial on how to paint flowing hair in the wind. Look at me learning actual art techniques. I definitely didn't think that my nail obsession would get me here. But last step on him was to add some shadows before finally adding a couple of virus bombs in the top corner. And this took like 2 hours, but I've been painting for about 7 and my gloves were busted. So there is no better and more satisfying time to top coat and add it to the set. And finally, we are done. I am so proud that I finally made this set. I was really struggling with getting the actual vision of what I wanted. And I don't know if this is what I planned, but I really like how it turned out. And I hope you like it too, so enjoy the beauty shot. And that is that. Sorry, I know the set really jumped around a lot because I really didn't know what I was doing, but hopefully you stuck with me and you like the results. I think the more I look at them, the more I love them. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you like this set, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Is anyone else painting a memorandum to a Warhammer 30k character on a nail set? I don't think so. I only find that here. If you want me to do your favorite Warhammer character, then comment it down below. But spoiler alert, I think it might be Lorgar because I'm reading First Heretic and I've fallen in love. Not my fault, he's constantly described as being just like smoking hot. It helps my engagement. I'm gonna stop waffling now. With that being said, I will see you in the next video. Bye.